Life is so much more uncertain and painful than we wish it were. We have been mostly trying to out-hustle, out-consume, and outperform our humanity. And we have mostly just left each other behind.
Kate Bowler, a writer, a historian, and one of the most honest voices I know. Kate was told that she had stage 4 cancer, and in true Kate fashion, she lived her life with more compassion, more ambition, and more hunger than ever. This conversation cracked me open in the best way.
The great evils of our culture are individualism, consumerism, hyper-certainty, and an unbelievably limited view of faith.
We don't have to culture war at this intensity.
We have had a fundamental wipeout and failure in how faith is practiced and how faith is taught. How do we create a modern version of faith that helps people understand?
Cancer made me a feminist. The diagnostic process was just so brutal. And I spent about 4 months openly sick and not being believed by anyone.
I felt so genuinely worthless.
Sometimes you need anger to survive.
You were diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Was there a moment in which that diagnosis had you question your faith? Kate Bowler, a writer, a historian, and one of the most honest voices I know. She's someone who's not afraid to look suffering in the face and to still find ways to talk about love, faith, and what it really means to live. Kate was told that she had stage 4 cancer, and in true Kate fashion, she lived her life with more compassion, more ambition, and more hunger than ever. In this episode, we talk about new beginnings, diasporas, failures, what it means to really refuse letting fear take over your life. Kate reminds all of us that aliveness is found in the hunger for more. More connections, more truth, more meaning. This conversation cracked me open in the best way, so let's go. Welcome, Kate. Hi, Kate.
Hey, love. I'm so glad we're talking today.
You're like my whoopee right now. I needed you today.
I genuinely needed this. This feels like the right time.
This is the right moment for us to be together. I like to generally do like a kickoff question. And so I thought a good one would be, who is Kate Bowler?
Well, I'm mostly a historian, I guess, because that's my brain. But I spend most of my life writing and thinking about whether the things we believe that are true can bear up the weight of the reality of our lives. I think that's like mostly who I am. I mean, like I'm a mom and et cetera, et cetera. But like I am mostly someone who is worried about cultural cliches and I obsess over them.
This is why you are my friend. Whether you like it or not, you're stuck with me.
I accept.
We're going to talk about new beginnings, which is something that you and I have talked a lot about. We're going to talk about diaspora experiences, which is a cornerstone of my identity, and I know in some ways also yours. And then learning from failure, which I think is not talked enough about in our culture. And so I'm excited to get into this with you. Yeah, it's 2025. We're going to zoom out before we zoom in, because I know you and I really want to zoom in, but first we're going to zoom out because I think having some context sort of helps. You were diagnosed in 2015 with stage 4 cancer. I would imagine for someone like you, was there a moment in which that diagnosis had you question your faith?
Yeah, I think it really took apart most of my belief structure, whether I wanted it to or not. I mean, I wanted to be the kind of person, and I want even now to be the kind of person that was like, Moj, I question nothing. God is so good. But when I was diagnosed so suddenly and the diagnostic process that I'd been a part of was just so brutal. I mean, I spent about 4 months just pretty openly sick and not being believed by anyone in the medical system. And so by the time I had been sent home with Pepto-Bismol from the hospital or like begged and pleaded for my life, it's not just that I felt devastated by the news. I felt so genuinely worthless in the process that it was hard for me even to come up with all of the sometimes you need anger to survive. And it was almost hard enough for me to like create enough anger to survive. What was in there was like a grab bag of shame, despair. And then interspersed with that was these very weird moments where I felt overwhelmingly loved, like loved by God, loved by other people. But it was such a roller coaster to kind of be feeling as devastated as I was, and then to just see sort of glimpses of wholeness that came and went.
As someone who is grounded in spirituality and faith, what are the questions that came up for you that really surprised you about yourself?
I mean, technically, Christian theology, and I'm a Christian, like has a response to evil. I mean, our response is supposed to be like, well, this is the world as it is. Like, this is the brokenness of the world. Things are not always going to work out the way we desperately hope and frankly deserve, because we don't even use the word deserve. But instead, I felt like, first of all, it took apart my ego. Like, aren't I special in any way? Like, am I not worth saving? Wasn't I pretty good? Wasn't I like pretty spiritually compliant? I mean, I was much angrier in that way than I wish that I was. So yeah, I guess one primary question was like, why is this happening to me? And what does it mean? Like, when you go through something really difficult, like, how do you take the randomness and the chaos of it and filter it into a place where you can hopefully distill it into some kind of wisdom? And for the first little bit, I was like not anywhere near wisdom. I was mostly just flailing around.
And so you're having these complex feelings. You're doing why me, which is superhuman, right?
Yeah.
And so at some point you go into remission, and I would imagine on some level you're experiencing like a new beginning. Like, is that how it felt? Is that what you thought? Is that what you think today? Like, how does that shape you?
Well, I guess the like terrible apocalyptic undoing feeling that I had with my diagnosis took about a year, because for at least a full year, we thought that was my last year. And then it was almost just time kept stretching on. So I was never really sure, like, well, when is this over? Like, when do I get to say, oh, I'm in remission, because I was trying drugs that were being tested on me in clinical trials. So there was no cohort of other people I could look at and say, like, oh, my probabilities are. So somewhere around year 3 of living, I mean, because I had almost weekly chemo for at least 2 years. So I really did not think I was going to survive much beyond that. So it was a very strange way of becoming a survivor, where I was trying to figure out, like, how do you actually, because at some point you have to say, I have to live beyond this crisis, even if you're in the middle of it. And that's mostly about adjusting the dials of fear. Like, how much does this fear take over my daily life? How much do I allow it to not let me make plans? How do I reclaim a feeling about the future and reclaim a feeling about the present? And because treatment has really just kind of stretched on and on, it was probably only around year 5 that I was like, okay, well, I guess this is a new way of being. So that was just like slowly turning down the fear, turning up life, but not really wanting to forget what I learned in that, which is we all have to deal with our own uncertainty. Like, we have to live with so much uncertainty every day. We're never going to get to feel really over most of what happens to us. But we don't want to be the kind of person that allows us to like be eclipsed by what's happened to us.
And so when I think of you, I think of like life and aliveness. Like, that's how I experience you. And I think that's why I'm so attracted to you as a friend. But I would imagine this like undoing, this like becoming a survivor impacted your work. And so like, where did that start to show up?
Yeah, I was a little surprised that it made me much more ambitious than I was before. Because a lot of people, I mean, and I think for women, they go like, well, first of all, you should be so grateful and therefore only focus on your garden and your relationships and your child and your family and your friends and just focus on the now. And I was like, screw that. I plan on. And so for instance, I wrote an entire absolutely ridiculously obscure history book, mostly in the hospital for a job I was positive I was going to be too dead to keep. And that feeling where like, well, I mean, screw it. Like, just try I really, in some ways, like, cancer made me a feminist. It made me realize if you have limited resources, like, you have to want things for yourself more than your circumstances will allow. So I did sort of become a laser in that moment.
I feel so seen in that way. I think that's part of it, right? Is that being a survivor, being pushed to the brink does make you someone that is hungry.
Yes. I love that too, because hunger, I think, is one of the great signs of our aliveness. I think people think that when you're facing your own limitations, you should say, well, thank you so much. That was enough. And all I think is the hungrier I am, the more it shows me that like, I am not done living. I'm just not done.
I relate to this because when I went through, I think of like an emotional near-death experience in 2020 and 21, Roy would always say like, why can't you slow down? Why can't you take a break? Why can't you just unplug? But in this weird way, like the work, the hunger is like what like revived me. And so I really relate to that. I am someone like you that thrives in motion, right?
That's good. I really like that description. You said you used an analogy one time too that really stuck with me. And the analogy I had used before I heard your description was I felt like I have been stripped down to the studs. And like there's this terrible but necessary basicness that you can get back to. And then in those moments you think, but I still at least know what the building is. Like at least know, even if it's not built, like who I really am. But you said, I thought this analogy was so beautiful. You were like, well, I'm a free diver. Like I can go deeper without oxygen.
Yes.
I thought that. Can you tell me more about like when you landed on that?
I think I watched like a documentary about free divers who like swim down like without, any assisted breathing support, like down, whatever it was, like 500 meters and such. And, like a ton of people have died doing this, but you like develop this like massive amount of openness inside, like through your lungs. And I think that for me, like that emotional, psychological death that I had
created like a ton of space inside, like all throughout here.
That like for me, like I'm like a whale now,
I love it. I do know. I know. There's I know
am a
that.
Whale. I can like suck up air and just sink to the bottom and just like it's dark and it's nothing and it's particles. And I find so much love for myself in that space.
That makes so much sense. Because I love the image too of like how everyday life and its needs, and even like the way that our consumer culture presents our needs to us as being solvable, packageable, individualistic, your daily dose of. When you describe that, I picture people just like barely below the surface, sipping on oxygen and being like, well, this is as far as I can go. I think there's something incredibly like beautiful about seeing people who've been forced into the kind of courage you're describing. Like it does kind of unlock a different level.
I don't wish it for others, to be super candid with you, but for me, like I've always been destined to this path. Again, same as you, which sort of brings me into like a, recent conversation you and I had about what it's like to come into what occurs to others as newfound success and fame, right? It's like you spend decades on decades working and contributing to seem like an overnight success.
Yeah. Yes. It's funny because it's kind of a combination of like two thoughts we've just been describing. One is like when you go through something really horrible, there's a terrible and wonderful and necessary humility that comes from that, because you realize like that you're about as special as everybody else. And that feeling, that breaking of any sort of preciousness.
Yes.
Like I can be taken apart. This could just be studs and bolts.
Yes. Yes.
That took me to, it has made me a lot more compassionate. It's made me a lot more justice minded. It's made me a lot more structural in my thinking. Like, holy crap, I'm not a story about a Canadian girl who moved to America. I'm just like an example of all of the institutional processes that have happened to me. So there's that. There's like, I am about as special as everyone else. And then the other bit is like, right alongside of it is with what is left. Man, has it been a rarefied, fun, ridiculous thing to sprint as fast as I can down one lane and try to build something that feels remarkable, that includes other ideas and people, and it's just like a hurricane of creativity. Man, that has been like a fun thing to hold side by side.
You are amongst, in my mind, like the elite in terms of like thought leadership of like authors and voices. People consult you for all kinds of things. The who's who of the folks I know are all trying to get a one-on-one with Kate. And so with that comes a new frequency and energy in your life. How do you deal with whether it's judgment or criticism or pressure? How do you deal with being known as someone who is now like successful at this thing that you do?
Well, first I cry badly and call you. So there's that. There's the first level, which is panic and shame. I think part of what's been difficult is, especially when you have the story that I have about myself is often gets in the way of my ability to actually make anything. Because my story is usually that, if you've heard of tall poppy syndrome, it's like the most Canadian / Commonwealth thing ever. Tall poppy syndrome is just the great fear of being the higher poppy in the poppy field and that you will get mown down. And it's like a national quality that like you don't want to be too tall. But I think not being nearly as afraid anymore has made me want to be as remarkable as I can possibly be with the limited resources that I have. Like, because what a shame is it to not try, like to not see the most you can do. I think one thing that's really helped me, actually, I started seeing an attachment psychologist who's been really wonderful about the kind of fear about separating yourself when actually at my core, I'm quite a lonely person. And so in ambition, sometimes it sort of reinforces a lonely feeling like, well, I don't want to be more. I don't want to separate myself or stand apart or look that I think I'm also special. But an attachment psychologist has been wonderful because it is really just another reminder that it's just another fear to live alongside. We all worry that if we grow too much or try too hard, that we'll find ourselves out on a limb. But an attachment psychologist reminds you, like, you just have to remind yourself to bring your team with you, that all the people that remind you that you're not afraid can just walk out on that limb with you. And it allows you to try bigger and bigger things. So I don't know. Lately, I've just been really focused on like, try as hard as you can and just make sure to bring your people with you.
I feel totally the opposite. I'm like,
do you really? Tell me.
Yes. I just feel like I like run out to that, like whatever that nature, like the woods thing. And I'm like, I'm all by myself and I'm trying hard as I fucking can. And I feel like I meet like I hear another voice that's like, I'm out here by myself and I'm going to try as fucking hard as I can. And like, you're just like, I feel like you run into face first, like a whole bunch of other people who are just like, I'm fucking crazy and I'm out here by myself, you know?
Oh, I think that makes sense to me. I do feel every time I try,
That's how I found you.
Oh my God.
Batshit crazy. And here you are, like, here we are.
And I mean, I think partly why I feel so, I totally like the analogy. I do feel like I normally feel very alone. And then the second you watch somebody else reach for something crazy or try, then all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, that's it.
Yes, totally.
I was never alone.
That's right. So, Kate, it's 2025. Things are going really amazing in our country, in our world.
Yes, they are. Thank you. I'm so glad you noticed.
Yeah.
Nothing's wrong.
Couldn't help but notice.
Yes, I have no notes. No notes.
We want all the notes. There's a lot of new practices as it relates to our new administration, our new regime, our new president, Trump, Donald J. Trump. New appointees. Some people say historic. Some people say returning to American values.
No, we've never
What say Kate?
No, we've never been here. I mean, I'm just saying from an American religious perspective, we've never been here before. One of the things that I write about is like the history of culture wars and how right and left position themselves as right and left, knowing that these terms frankly change depending on who's screaming them. And in this case, we have one of the strangest alliances of the religious right, whatever it was 30 years ago, plus this new tech oligarchy, plus a president whose only religious background, frankly, is strands of the prosperity gospel, both secular and religious. I mean, that's never happened before. Combined with a very apocalyptic tenor. The feeling that every time there's like a series, for example, of executive orders that we have, that it could be the feeling that it could be anything is a kind of contingency feeling that we have not experienced in like our religious expectation of Washington, D.C. So if you had told me 10 years ago that we'd have to write a religious history of what's happening right now, I would genuinely tell you that it was so far-fetched that it would never have happened. So I think historians are scrambling to account for just what an odd, like it doesn't follow the flow of the networks as they've existed. This is a whole new constellation.
So Christianity seems to be, from their perspective, at the center of the Trump administration.
It's very difficult for those leaders to coherently explain this position because frankly, like just as an example of like the various kinds of Christian presidencies that have been imagined since, let's just say, since Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was the first president ever to be deemed an evangelical president, 1976. They were so angry, for instance, about his one interview with Playboy, in which he said that he looked with lust every now and then at another woman. The mildest, sweetest, if there is a quote unquote sin that can be described, it was the sweetest sin ever described. We've gone from imagining somebody with, who's worried about the appearance of an imagination of adultery to someone who is, convicted of sexual assault, is openly an adulterer. And yet we have Franklin Graham pronouncing Billy Graham's own son, proclaiming that God is at the heart of this story. It is, is a very confusing constellation of people. It's like they swapped out all of the nouns with a cast of characters that they can't reconcile. And that's why I think it's been so complicated, at least for me as a historian, to track which public faith defenders are in power, because even the people that were on his religious board of advisors last presidency are not the power players. That like it's such a revolving door of megachurch pastors and televangelists, and none of them can tell a coherent culture war story, in my opinion. Like just from like a not even a normative perspective, just from a descriptive perspective, it's an odd time to be a religious leader saying this is a Christian America.
So I went to Catholic school growing up. I've been to a lot of churches. I really like Christianity and Christian churches and experience. I was born in Lexington, Kentucky. It's really what I was exposed to as a young kid. I've found a lot of kindness, neighborly love within Christianity. Even if you maybe didn't want your child to grow up and be like me, there was still a warmth there. I know this sounds weird and it makes people angry, but I do understand. I'm trying to describe an experience. Christianity today is being used as the reason for proposed legislation. And as of last night, executive orders around LGBTQ plus IA rights, specifically trans people are under the gun, legislation around women's rights to choose, mass deportations of the people who actually make our country go round. What say, Kate?
Well,
like, is this Christian values? Is this a Christian expression?
It's devastating. I try to spend most of my life is like teaching people who are going to go into Christian ministry, or, giving talks to beautiful churches. And among those churches, which really describes most of the center and center left, they feel entirely like cut off from this story about a Christian America that has now found a million enemies, that is made, it imagines trans people as enemies. It imagines all of Planned Parenthood as enemies. I mean, it is like taken culture warring to like deafening apocalyptic levels. And before, where I think people in the same church or denomination felt like they might say, have a different view. I mean, typically they might have a different view on abortion or whether gay people can be pastors. I mean, there's typically those sorts of issues, but they haven't been until recently ones that absolutely tear the church apart and tear families apart. So I'm really horrified and saddened by a refusal to see love at the core of our story, God's love for us, our love for each other, the demand that we belong to each other, the demand that we protect one another's rights and bodies, and that we fight for one another. I just really think that the culture wars are now cannibalizing all of us, and it's really created a difficult alliance between whatever Trump's policies are and then this story of Christian America. And it's taken it in such an intense direction that most people who now say they're Christian in public feel like they have to constantly be in conversation with that instead of being able to say, we believe in the golden rule.
This episode is brought to you by Global Freedoms, a nonprofit media platform amplifying global freedom movements through storytelling, culture, and coalition building, and supporting human rights and challenging censorship through powerful creative media. Follow Global Freedoms on Substack and social to learn more. Trolley AI, the system behind operations and production workflows that keep founder-led teams moving. It's how we scale without losing clarity. Learn more at withtrolley.ai. I woke up this morning because I was feeling good all day yesterday. And then at midnight, I had like a full-on anxiety attack. And I woke up this morning and I was like, make America love again. How do you,
Yeah, that's right. Because we have anchoring virtues we're supposed to be about. Like there's an actual, and if people think it's abstract, it's an actual list. Mm-hmm. The list is in order. And the first is love. Mm-hmm. And love, joy, peace, forbearance. That means not being a dick to other people.
Yes.
Like it's a really concrete list of how do you know that God's love is there? Well, because love is patient, love is kind. Yeah. Love is not like terrorizing our neighbors and refusing to love anything other than our own reflection.
Kate, you say an ugly truth will serve us than a beautiful lie. Again, another reason why I love you. I'm just like, yes, I think the truth is sexy. Can you provide us with some ugly truths that you believe our country needs to hear right now?
Well, I think we've replaced the word faith with the word certainty. We imagine our certainties will save us.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to bludgeon each other with our own conspiracy theory and algorithmic, only recently believed conclusion. It's like, I think we're so busy pretending to be certain because we are so desperately afraid.
Mm-hmm.
We are afraid that if we open ourselves back up to the vulnerability of love and care of others, that it'll take our lives apart in the way that we know it. And I think we're much more committed to our identity markers, like a political party or a church label, than we are to actually like loving the people we've been entrusted to. We've been entrusted to our communities. We've been entrusted to our neighbors, to our friends, to the story of our country. Life is so much more uncertain and painful than we wish it were. We have been mostly trying to out-hustle, out-consume, and outperform our humanity. And we have mostly just left each other behind. So I think that the great evils of our culture are individualism, consumerism, hyper certainty, and an unbelievably limited view of faith. And I wish we just desperately wish we could talk everybody else into the vulnerability that forces us back into the courage to belong.
The courage to belong. I recently came back from the Middle East, and I came back and I said, Kate, we're dying from individualism. We're dying because of this, because I can't call my neighbor to pick up my kid, or everyone that helps me is paid.
We cannot solve most of the problems that will take our lives apart, period. We can't, not alone.
Kate, how much of this is like your Canadian Mennonite?
Yes.
Because this part of me is my Iranian.
Yeah.
This is my Iranianness is like what wants to live on a compound. The way that like my grandparents and grandparents and grandparents and grandparents did. So for you,
yeah,
like as a Canadian who spent most of your time in the States, living in North Carolina, you're like having these cross-cultural experiences of faith. Is this like a function of Canadian? Is this a function of Mennonite? Is this a function of what is your realization around this based on?
I guess maybe two primary things. One is, I grew up in the middle of the prairies that's mostly dominated by this religious group that acts as a group. I mean, the one amazing thing about this group called Mennonites is they just refuse to suffer alone. Now, they can't usually fix their problem. They'll mostly like build you a fence, or if they see like flat pack IKEA furniture somewhere, they will build it against your will. But they will busy bee their way into this form of being indispensable that you realize like, oh man, whatever I thought I was doing by myself, it's a joke. They're going to feed you. They're going to annoy you into interdependence. I mean, it's the reason they've been able to, like thrive as a community. It's not because they had a lot of money, but they were rich in people. And living in the States has been very lonely because I don't have family here. Usually, no matter how long I've lived here, I usually go home for a couple months every year. And every time I feel reabsorbed into this we feeling. And then I get very achy. And in that feeling, I took away how ridiculously unsustainable our lives are. And it only works if everything is going well. And it will only ever go well for so long.
That's right. Part of why I've been so drawn to talking to you is because of my own grief and pain around what is done in the name of God. As an Iranian, as a person whose family members live under the Islamic Republic, and witnessing what is being done in Palestine, in Israel, various parts of the world, whether it's Nigeria, so much is done, so much suffering. Why do you think people inflict so much pain and suffering in the name of religion?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I guess my best American religious history answer is that we love to imagine a closed universe, and that we know all the rules of the person at the tippy top. And then we love to imagine every circumstance in our own image. Like, I really think that we can't bear uncertainty. And so we will invent it rather than live with not entirely knowing. For example, like in the 19th century, most of the coolest things that were done were these mass efforts at helping neighbor, like literacy, like housing, they called it the Great Long Century. And most of it was these volunteer efforts of people who had no money, who just like devoted themselves to these enormous charitable organizations. When I look at that, I think, what a beautiful example of what could be done in the name of God. And then I look at the same century being responsible for human slavery, for
women in Afghanistan.
Women,
where do you start?
Well, I mean, it's just like, and so on and so on and so on. And I just think we would always rather invent a God who who is cruel, but just in a way that we understand it, rather than imagine that we don't always understand why things happen and that we will have to live with as much uncertainty as everyone else.
I need a better answer than that, Kate, but we'll come back to that.
I'm going to keep
We'll
thinking
come
about
back.
it.
Because
I do usually think it's about certainty. Because
and
I don't.
it's not like it's not a good answer. It's more like as a whale.
Yeah. Tell me.
I feel like we have to like, it's like telling people that cane sugar is bad, like corn syrup is bad for you. Like, I feel like everyone's like doing this bad thing to themselves. And I'm like if they just knew better, they would make different choices, but maybe I'm just wrong.
No, that's right. Okay. Well,
I don't know. It's just I think the future, and we can talk about this maybe in a part 2, but I do think the future is like this entrepreneurial creativity mindset coming into like the historical, how do we, and this is like one of the things you and I have talked about, and we're not going to get into what I'm thinking about creating with you, but how do we create a modern version of faith that helps people understand, like not a new religion, but how do we become better translators of like, what are the inherent values of this? Because, like if I think about this, like, this is like, I'm thinking about this from the position of like failure, which is like our third section, which is like, to me, we have had like a fundamental wipeout and failure in like how faith is practiced and how faith is taught.
Agree.
And like,
yes,
like it's just,
I agree. Yep.
And so it's like, everything you in your book, like everything happens for a reason. Like it's just like, help me, Kate. Like I need you to help me figure this out. Like why, what is this reason? How do we get out of this fail? Because we can't keep doing this in the name of God.
Yeah. It's because you're getting me just off. I just gave a lecture this week on like the history of how people interpret evil and that most people want to double down on trying to solve the problem of how could God be both good and fair, right? Because normally this is one of the great mysteries of the world is why do bad things happen to good people? So you either have to say that bad things happen to people who deserve it, or you don't, or you have to leave it a mystery. It's very, very difficult to understand why we live in a world with this much evil, this much chaos, this much wrong, if God is so good and wants good things for us. So most of people's responses to that is to try to systematize. We all have systematic theology, but like try to answer questions that are unanswerable. And when we do that, we almost always create a new evil. Like, for example, everything happens for a reason is a perfect example, I think, of a kind of evil we inflict on other people. We look at other people's suffering, and instead of saying, I don't know why that happened to you, or it happened because of this horrible person and has nothing to do with who you really are, what you deserve, we invent reasons where there aren't any. I think So sometimes bad things are done in the name of faith because we have tried to answer unanswerable questions. We have tried to answer for God in a way that's actually cruel and petty and hypocritical and ridiculous. So even when I see sometimes like billboards on the side of the road that say like, have questions, find all the answers in the Bible. I'm like, the Bible is not an answer factory. It's a repository of wisdom and truth and mystery. So I think what I feel like, especially the United States does wrong is it's always trying to get back to this like formula version of faith. It wants like 5 principles of so-and-so, and that's how you know it's true. When like most of truth is intention. It's, for instance, that like half of the purpose of this world, if not the entire purpose, is to love other people. And yet the more we love, the more we open ourselves up to pain and the fear of loss. That's just a reality we have to live inside. Love creates fear. We have to live in the relationship between love and fear at all times. There's no solution to love. I mean, this is what Bell Hooks taught is like, there's no safety in love. But I feel like Americans always want every good thing to feel safe and certain. And none of it is.
Do you think we're a fucking fail right now?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't know anyone who wants to go to church. I don't feel like church. I mean, I love pastors and I know how hard they're trying, but I think what people are not experiencing, what they really need right now, which is like peace, like sense of being loved in this totalizing way, the sense that they're being guided into wisdom that's better than what they're going to get in the newspaper or like Joe Rogan. And I'm really worried that we now have all of these small under-resourced communities and people are not getting it from their book clubs. And we don't have a model that's working for people. We've tried, but we've not really been willing to fail. We've mostly just been trying to do what we've always been doing.
And so people like me all flock to you or pastors or religious leaders or various institutions because they see you as someone that might have the answer. You are looking at a whole group of us that have like experienced like this profound like failure and loss as it relates to like our society. So what's the common thread that you're telling us that like what is the like little bites of wisdom that you can share from your insight here to people like me that look at us and I think we are fucking fail. Like we're just a fail on this religion faith thing right now. If I was God, I would be pissed at us.
I think we can always tell that we're failing if it's pulling us away from love, period.
Why is that hard?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Just make it make sense.
Well, that's why, Moj, like being an anti-culture warrior is really important to me. Like it's so important to me. That's why I struggle because so like my expertise is in American religious history and weirdly the spiritual biography of Donald Trump. And like I don't ever want to, I'm always trying to frame like, hey guys, we don't have to culture war at this intensity. Hey guys, we don't have to.
But it's lucrative, Kate.
Oh my gosh.
Come on.
I know.
It's very difficult to have this conversation without me erupting into like where money and capitalism and power
you're right.
erupts. It's difficult because
no, you're right. The economy is so loud here. I totally agree.
We're in the attention economy. If it bleeds, it leads. How much money do you think all of the social platforms made yesterday with us glued our face into executive orders and who was at the thing?
You're right. But like for real, the temperature on this stuff even 15 years ago was so much lower. Like it didn't create such an intense chasm between this many people. And that's why I always feel like I want to describe our way out of this. Be like, guys, we don't have to do it like this. Hey, guys, we can be more like big tent again. We don't have to have so many litmus tests for each other. Hey, we don't actually have to use this tone of voice with each other anymore. So, I mean, everything has become, and it sounds like a cliche to say everything's become so politicized, but like you shouldn't be able to know everybody, like every part of everybody's voting agendas based on which devotional resource you're picking up. That's very upsetting. I don't want to have to feel God's love mediated through a story of a Christian nation. I don't. It's not necessary. No other country requires this.
Well, really?
In this way, that God made this a city on a hill. I mean, no one looks at the founding of Canada and says,
I mean, the Middle East is set up of
well, this particular version of like a city on a hill and that God created America for special purposes is that is told through Puritans and the spread from east to west. That's just like Canada
how else were you going to justify murdering and slaughtering millions of Native Americans, babe?
Canada has landed on a very strange compromise to this, but it didn't tell the same story of sacred nation. And I wish we could like
we're good at brand
foundation.
We're really good at marketing.
Moj, I mean, if I were to pick a different Christianity or a different way of being faithful now, I would put down the algorithms that isolate you from loving the people you've been entrusted with. Be obsessed with other people's experience so that you can learn the way that God is moving through each person that you know and isn't restricted to the people you wish it were. And be hopelessly devoted to serving other people because in that service, you will stop it'll strip us of the pride of whatever story we've built too high.
This is simple stuff. And it feels good to do. Watching the LA fires and my city come together without the resources of the government we had hoped, it has come down to people helping feed each other, move each other, house each other. I've had better conversations this past 10 days with people than I have in years. I have felt less lonely. I have never felt so loved in my life as the night that we were sitting there and my phone exploded with alerts and calls and emails from people I hadn't talked to in 20 years to let me know that there was a fire right by my house. Being obsessed with people's experience, period.
Because we don't own God's movement through the world. We can see glimpses of it, but then mostly we have to rely on it in the lives of other people. So if we're not really convinced that other people hold that divine spark and that we're going to learn something, we're going to want to do it to them. We're going to want to make a religion in our own image and enforce it on other people.
Well, we'll talk about this another time. I do think that's what happened. I think that we fell into a place of self-care versus community care. And I think that that's how we got here with President Trump, which is that his reaction, his visceral ability to organize came off the backs of a very, I'm looking for a new word to call it because it sounds insulting to millennials when I say it's millennial, but it's like a Instagram or, like a, I don't know, like a Refinery 29 version of like what it means to be like, I don't know, like this thing happened and I think it just gave them like kind of carte blanche to go cuckoo bananas.
I think sometimes too, like if I were going to write the history of this,
which you will,
which I'm kind of doing because I'm working on a history of self-help, and that ends up being like how people try to make it generic, instead of make it specific.
Well, nobody's going to write a book saying self-help, fucking go through pain and suffer. Like, it's like pretty fucking easy. Just nobody wants to do that shit.
There's 5 steps, Moj. You just don't know the 5 steps. I'm going to tell you.
And like the first 3 steps are like writing a whole bunch of shit on paper. It's like, no, bro.
Step 1 obviously is your gratitude journal.
Face first into the fucking head of the line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to run through a couple quick questions because our show is sponsored by our nonprofit, Global Freedoms. We like to give all of our listeners an opportunity to learn from you. So love to know, what is a book that has changed your life and perspective? I know that's really hard for you, probably met 40 million, but like just one. You can just give me one for right now.
The latest book that I'm completely in love with, and therefore it has changed my life, is Greg Boyle's Cherished Belonging. It's his recent book about the lives of former gang members in LA and the way that they learn to strip away shame and to step into new lives by having this radical sense of belonging and really like compassion for themselves and everyone. Like it makes, I've been to Greg Boyle's ministry and I've never felt so both loved, and everything that I brought up was like humored. Like they didn't even care if they knew about anything that I was saying, which was always super random. They're like, good for you. It was so like, bless your heart. Everything you do is wonderful. I felt like I've never seen such compassionate community as at that ministry.
In a world where algorithms are killing us, is there any social account that you believe we should be following? Can be on any platform.
Well, actually, lately I really like my little sister, Maria Bowler. She has a new book that came out about how to get out of an obsessively hustle mindset and into a different kind of creative space. And it's, as someone who hustles a lot, it helps me like reframe. Her new book's called Making Time. And so she does all these videos on how you like basically repurpose that energy into something that's like really generous and really creative and really sparky.
Another question we have is there like a social justice cause that's important to you that you're fighting for that you think should be on people's minds in this moment?
I guess one cause that's very close to my heart is medical debt, because my family was almost bankrupted by medical debt early on in my care. And so RIP medical debt, that buys medical debt from basically like the bounty hunter industry and emancipates people from it, is an organization that I love to support and find very inspirational.
Amazing. We'll share it with all of our listeners. Hey, are you familiar with the term gender apartheid? If so, what is your understanding of it?
No,
and
I haven't heard it in that way. Tell me.
I mean, we've all heard the expression of apartheid in South Africa and honestly in this country. And so really, one of the things I think a lot about is gender apartheid in Afghanistan and Iran, and the ways in which, the expressions of gender apartheid actually can be seen across the world. Like when Mahsa Amini was murdered, I would say to people all the time, and do interviews on like MSNBC, and I would say, like, if we don't solve this issue, it's going to spread like a cancer. And people thought I was kind of nuts. And then the 7th happened, and for all the wrong reasons, all of a sudden people thought what I had to say was like really important. But in the process, I still think that this issue of, women can't sing, women can't look outside, they can't work, they can't go to parks, they can't go to nail salons, they can't have any agency over divorce and marriage. So gender apartheid, like, how do we create an understanding of something that's abstract to us far away, but actually ripples right into our lives here every day?
Wow. Yeah. I wrote a book about the changing roles of women in Christianity over the last 80 years. And even just in looking through the lives of people who ostensibly have all kinds of freedom, it was such an eye-opener for me to see just the intense performance and restriction and like all the power that it requires to keep women in their place.
That's
And
right.
so having seen that in a Christian context, I know how like pernicious and also just how widespread that cultural expectation is that women should not have control over their money, their custody arrangements, their property, their business loans, their. So I think even if people have a hard time looking internationally, it's worth just asking a woman in your life when they were able to legally have control of like their own careers, their own. I mean, it's such a recent memory. It's
That's right.
always like I find it humbling when I worry that something is far away to just look at an example of how very recent it was at home, and then I historicize my own ignorance pretty quickly.
Yes, whether or not women could get a credit card here in this country or their own apartment in the 70s. I remember talking to Billie Jean King about this, or for example, in Iran or Afghanistan, they are legally, a second-class citizen, not just culturally. Women in France can't wear hijab, for example. And so the policing of women's lives legally is like something to really think about. I think about that a lot. And I think that I frankly believe that the more we focus on that issue, actually the positive sort of ripples of that will flow from how we treat and honor women within society. I really believe that. I really, really, really believe that, like beyond any other issue in my life. Kate, I really love you a lot.
You're so smart. I really just love being able to think with you. You are like dark and deep and faster than anyone I know. And I'm just really grateful to be your friend.
I appreciate you. And my therapist gave me great coaching around this brain of mine over the past 4 years, really learning how to like hone it because my compute is kind of intense. So figuring out how to hold emotion and space for it and be vulnerable in the process. And so I appreciate friends like you that help me balance the like rapidness of like compute, but also like hold space for my emotion and vulnerability and fears. And so I hope we can come up with something together that helps people understand that like we need to make America love again. Thank you for joining us.
All right. That's it for today. If you felt that, drop a comment, share with someone, or bring it to the next conversation you have. Follow Reset the Algorithm on Substack and all social platforms for more context, more questions, and fewer filters. This is not content. This is the reset. Catch you on the next one. Reset the Algorithm is a space for conversation, reflection, and perspective, not a substitute for professional advice or support. The ideas shared here are meant to inform, inspire, not to diagnose, treat, or guide personal, medical, legal, or financial decisions. Please consult a qualified professional for anything related to your individual needs.